I had always loved the outdoors, and hiking was one of my favorite pastimes. So when I heard about the beauty of the Sequoia National Forest, I knew I had to experience it for myself. I packed my backpack with all the essentials, including a tent, food, and water, and set out on my adventure. The first day of the hike was absolutely breathtaking. The sun was shining and the air was cool and crisp. I took my time, enjoying the scenery and taking plenty of pictures. As night began to fall, I set up my tent in a quiet clearing and started a fire. Everything was perfect. That's when things started to get strange. As I was cooking my dinner over the fire, I heard rustling in the bushes. I assumed it was just some small animals, maybe a raccoon or a possum, but as the noise grew louder, I began to feel uneasy. Suddenly, a large creature burst out of the bushes and charged straight towards me. I'd never seen anything like it. It was about 6 feet tall, covered in shaggy brown fur, and had razor-sharp teeth and claws. It was unlike any animal I had ever seen, and I knew immediately that I was in danger. I grabbed my backpack and ran as fast as I could. The creature was right on my heels, and I could hear its heavy breathing and snarls behind me. I could feel its hot breath on my neck, and I knew that if I didn't find a way to escape, I would be done for. As I ran, I tried to remember everything I knew about surviving in the wilderness. I knew I couldn't outrun the creature forever, but I also knew that I had to keep moving if I wanted to stay alive. I ducked behind trees and rocks, hoping to lose the creature in the darkness. But it was no use. The creature was too fast and too determined. It seemed to be getting closer and closer, and I knew that my time was running out. Just as I thought all was lost, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance. It was a small cabin, and I knew that if I could just make it there, I might have a chance to escape. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before, and finally stumbled into the clearing where the cabin stood. The creature was right behind me, but I didn't have time to look back. I pounded on the door of the cabin, praying that someone was inside. To my relief, the door swung open, and an elderly man looked at me with surprise. I could barely speak, but managed to gasp out a few words about the creature chasing me. The man didn't seem surprised. In fact, he seemed almost expectant. "I know all about that creature," he said calmly. "It's been terrorizing these woods for years. I've been waiting for someone like you to come along." I didn't know what to say. Was this man crazy? Why would he be waiting for someone to be chased by a monster? But before I could ask any questions, the man handed me a large shotgun. "Take this," he said. "It's the only thing that can stop that creature. You're going to have to face it head on." I hesitated. I had never fired a gun before, but the creature was getting closer by the second, and I knew I didn't have a choice. I raised the gun and took aim. The creature was almost upon us, but I stayed calm and waited for the right moment. As it leaped towards me, I pulled the trigger. The sound of the gun was deafening, and the creature roared in pain. It stumbled backward, giving me a chance to reload and take aim again. This time I aimed for its head, and the shot hit its mark. The creature let out one final howl and fell to the ground, dead. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had survived an encounter with a creature that I didn't even know existed. The old man congratulated me on my bravery and gave me a place to rest for the night. The next morning I packed up my things and headed back to civilization. I couldn't wait to tell my friends and family about my incredible experience, but I knew that most of them wouldn't believe me. It didn't matter though. I knew what I had seen, and I knew that I had faced my fears and come out victorious. Years later, I would return to the Sequoia National Forest, this time with a group of friends. We hiked through the same trails and camped in the same clearing where I had faced the creature. I told them my story, and even though some of them were skeptical, they all listened intently. As we sat around the fire that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger, and now I was sharing my story with others. The Sequoia National Forest would always hold a special place in my heart, not just because of its natural beauty, but because of the incredible experience. I had always been fascinated by the beauty and mystery of the Sequoia National Forest, so when a group of my friends invited me to go on a hiking trip there, I jumped at the opportunity. We packed our backpacks with all the essentials and set out on our adventure. The first day of the hike was incredible. We saw stunning waterfalls, towering trees, and breathtaking views. As night began to fall, we set up our tents in a quiet clearing and started a fire. Everything was perfect. That's when things started to get strange. As we were cooking our dinner over the fire, we heard a strange noise coming from the nearby trees. It sounded like someone was crying, but it was distorted and eerie. We couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it seemed to be getting closer. We were all a bit spooked, but we tried to brush it off and continue with our meal. That's when one of my friends noticed something in the shadows. "Hey, what's that over there?" he asked, pointing to a dark shape in the distance. We all turned to look and our hearts sank. It was a body, lying motionless on the ground. We could barely make out any details in the dim light, but we knew immediately that something was very wrong. Without thinking, we ran over to the body, hoping against hope that we were mistaken. But as we got closer, we could see that it was definitely a human, and that he was dead. We were all in shock. We had come on this trip to enjoy nature and have a good time, but now we had stumbled upon something terrifying. We tried to call for help, but our phones had no signal. That's when things got even worse. As we stood there trying to figure out what to do, we heard the crying again. But this time, it was louder and clearer. We could tell that it was coming from the body itself. We were all paralyzed with fear. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. But as the crying grew louder, we knew that we had to investigate. One of my friends cautiously approached the body and knelt down beside it. As he got closer, he could see that the man's face was twisted in agony, and his eyes were open wide in terror. And then he heard it, a low growling sound coming from somewhere nearby. He tried to stand up and back away, but it was too late. Something grabbed him from behind and dragged him into the darkness. We all ran in the opposite direction, screaming and panicking, but we soon realized that we were hopelessly lost. We had no idea where we were or how to get back to civilization. We heard the growling and crying all around us, and we knew that we were being hunted. We had no weapons and no way to defend ourselves. All we could do was run. We ran for what felt like hours until we were exhausted and disoriented. And then we stumbled upon something even more horrifying than the body we had found earlier. In the middle of a clearing, we saw a group of people standing around a fire. They were all wearing strange robes and masks, and they were chanting in a language we didn't understand. And then we saw what they were holding, the body of our friend. He was still alive, but barely. They had cut him open and were using his organs in some kind of ritual. We were too horrified to move, too paralyzed with fear to do anything but watch. And then they noticed us. They stopped chanting and turned to face us, their masks twisted in anger and hatred. We knew that we were next. We ran again, faster than we ever had before. We could hear their footsteps behind us, getting closer and closer. But we didn't stop until we reached a cliff overlooking a deep ravine. We had no choice but to jump. We all took a leap of faith, hoping that we would survive the fall. And miraculously, we did. We landed in the water below and swam to the other side, gasping for air. We looked up at the cliff and saw the group of cultists standing at the edge, glaring down at us. They didn't attempt to follow us, but we knew that they were still out there, somewhere in the forest. We continued to run until we finally stumbled upon a ranger station. We told the authorities everything that had happened, but they didn't believe us. They searched the forest, but they found nothing. Nobody, no cultists, no evidence of any kind. But we knew what we had seen, and we knew that we had narrowly escaped with our lives. We went home shaken and traumatized and tried to put the experience behind us. But the memory of that night would haunt us forever. We never forgot the growling, the crying, the twisted faces of the cultists, or the body of our friend being used in some kind of ritual. We learned the hard way that there are some things in the forest that are better left unseen and unheard. The Sequoia National Forest may be beautiful and serene during the day, but at night it can become a place of unimaginable horror. We will never forget the lessons we learned on that fateful hike, and we will always be wary of the unknown terrors that lurk in the darkness. I've always been fascinated by the idea of Bigfoot. As a kid, I used to read books about the legendary creature and watch documentaries on TV. So when my friends suggested we go on a hike in the wilderness, I jumped at the chance. We set out early in the morning, eager to explore the rugged terrain. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and we were all in high spirits. We hiked for a few hours, taking in the breathtaking scenery and stopping occasionally to rest and enjoy the view. But as the day wore on, things started to feel a bit strange. We began to notice strange noises in the forest, rustling in the bushes, snapping twigs, and an occasional guttural growl. We joked about the possibility of Bigfoot being out there, but we didn't really believe it. After all, it was just a legend, right? But then something happened that made us all rethink our assumptions. We were hiking along a narrow trail when we heard a loud roar coming from up ahead. It was a sound like nothing we had ever heard before. Deep, powerful, and otherworldly. We froze in our tracks, not sure what to do, but then we saw it. A massive creature, standing at least 7 feet tall, covered in shaggy brown fur, with piercing red eyes. It was Bigfoot. We were all stunned, unable to move or speak. The creature stared at us for a few moments, then let out another roar and disappeared into the forest. We couldn't believe what we had just seen. We huddled together, trying to process the experience. It was like something out of a movie, but it was real. As we continued our hike, we kept our eyes peeled for any signs of Bigfoot. We didn't see the creature again, but we did notice other strange things. Unusual footprints in the mud, broken branches, and strange markings on the trees. We knew that we had stumbled upon something incredible, something that few people had ever seen. We talked about it for hours, trying to piece together what had happened and what it all meant. When we returned home, we shared our story with anyone who would listen. Some people were skeptical, dismissing it as a hoax or a case of mistaken identity, but others were fascinated, eager to hear more. We continued to explore the wilderness, searching for more evidence of Bigfoot. We never did see the creature again, but we did have other strange experiences. Strange lights in the sky, unexplained noises in the night, and a general sense of unease that we couldn't quite shake. We came to believe that Bigfoot was just one of many mysteries that the wilderness held. There were other creatures out there, other phenomena that we couldn't explain. We never forgot our encounter with Bigfoot, and we never stopped being fascinated by the possibility that there was more to the world than met the eye. The wilderness was a place of wonder and mystery, and we knew that we would always be drawn to it, no matter what secrets it held.